Good morning to you all. I thought it was about time I put another little video up. As I say, I haven't been feeling too well of the last few days. As I said earlier, I do feel the cold due to having to have blood thinners such as warfarin. And when you feel cold, you feel miserable, you don't want to do anything. Well, yesterday the sun came out and I popped down to the greenhouse. I know this has got nothing to do with telephones, but it's just to say how things were. And I must admit, I'd done a little bit of repotting down there. I thought perhaps summer's on its way. Well, let's hope so. Anyhow, I was also at the same time waiting for 2 boxes to be sent to me from eBay with 2 telephones. Well, as you can see, one of them has arrived. The other one, hopefully, will arrive today sometime. So here goes. Now this, as you probably all recognise, is a Spanish phone. Interesting point though, the name on the underside of the base is Elasa, E-L-A-S-A. I'll show you a picture of it when I turn it over. And I'd never heard of that name before. Googling it, it looks like it was associated at some time, or perhaps still is, with the German Siemens company. I just don't know. Can't really get too clear information what's going on. But the thing is, the rest of the phone is by a familiar name, Citesa, which was a branch of ITT. And ITT was the originators, if you like, of Western Electric in America. And so many bits are very reminiscent of Western Electric components. Now, this phone, I'll show you a close-up where the name is. I'll try and hold it still so it actually does focus. I've been noticing, and I apologise, for some of the videos I put up, particularly of the lamps and that, where I've held the lamp, it hasn't been in focus. So I've left this on a little bit longer so you can get an idea of it. Now, this phone, I would think, is possibly late 70s. I don't have a date on it. Well, at least I haven't found a date yet on it. But another writer who goes under the name of Vintage Telephones, he's very knowledgeable, and he's often said about this type of telephone, although the ones that he's got, some of them are from South America. But nevertheless, they're still the same, basically the same. And it's interesting to note. Now, anyhow, this phone has, let me look at the dial. I took the dial out from the front. There's the front, is Telefonica, which I would think is the latest. It's quite a late one. Also, looking at the type of the contacts in there, they're little spade type contacts which you just push on. So it looks like all this was made to speed up things. Your capacitors of that type, and they're made by Citesa as well. I think these things are non-linear resistors, one there. There's also another one sandwiched. Let's see if I can show you it. Got all modern things today. There it's just to the bottom of that capacitor. There's your bell, and this is 1900 or 1900 ohms. So it's quite a high ohmage. I know there's a lot of talk about putting, when we refer to English phones, putting resistors in to reduce the ringing. I tend to not bother with this because I find that the system I'm on, it seems to ring the bells whether they've got the resistors in or not, and I tend not to worry about that resistor. But there again, perhaps in some cases they are essential, but certainly not with my stuff. Anyway, let's have a look at the dial. As I said, a lot of the stuff is Western Electric type. Let's look at the dial, the other side. Always look at the backs of things and see how, the way they are made, what type they are. And you can immediately see that the dial is virtually identical to the Bell phones of America, which is Western Electric, and it's that style of dial. Also, notice, or not notice if you like, the O and the finger stop are virtually next door to one another, which immediately tells you it's not an automatic electric dial. And the sign Telefonica. And also look at it. Where are we? I can find it in a minute. I'm hoping this focus is on this. There we are. I think they're there. What we're looking at now is a little pinhole, if you like, which you can remove the label. And this is exactly the same as the American dials. So yeah, very, very similar. The only difference basically between the American dial is the positioning of the finger stop. This one is the finger stop which is reminiscent of most telephones, but whereas the American one, the finger stop is in a slightly different position. Not with the automatic or Strauja made phones in America. They're virtually like that, in that position. Anyhow, also I must make a mention, as I said, and I have made this mention before, I've mentioned vintage telephones, also Andy's Shed, which, okay, they specialise, well I say specialise, don't specialise, they tend to concentrate more on the British phones, but not exclusively. And if any of you at a spare time, I'm thinking of Sundays, that's Sundays English time at 6:30, have a little look at his videos, Andy's Shed, and you'll be able to join in. I think you have to be registered first, I'm not sure. But anyhow, it's worth it. It's quite good because lots of conversations are brought up on various things. A lot of interest actually is exchanged. And yeah, it's added. So it's something which I look forward to on a Sunday. There's nothing else on the box. In fact, the box at the moment's a load of rubbish. So that was that. So I've given a plug to those two. And there are other sites out there as well, which are well worthy of a little look. Now let's have a look at the handset, which is a typical Spanish type, and also reminiscent of the American style of microphone or transmitter, and once again made by Citesa in Spain. That's presumably the number. I can't see any dates on any of these, so if I'd suddenly find the date I should be pleased, but I don't think I'm going to. And the receiver Now I have noticed that sometimes the receivers in these are exactly the same receiver as in the 706 telephone. It's known as a rocking armature. It's where the armature rocks. I suppose that would make sense. But this one is in fact one by Citesa. I'm pretty sure it's got the Citesa name on there. Just having a closer look. Yep, there's the name at the bottom, Citesa. So that type of receiver could be replaced with the one out of a 706, which is the rocking armature. I did notice, I think it was on a picture that was put up by a vintage telephones, showing a Spanish phone, and even showed the earpiece or receiver with the name STC on it. Well, STC is Standard Telephones and Cables, which, along with the radio manufacturer Colster Brands of Footscray, Kent, was an ITT company. So there was a direct connection. It's interesting to note that going around the world, when I say going around the world, I haven't gone around the world completely, but the phones I picked up basically fall into recognised makers. You've got Ericsson's, Automatic Electric, ITT, Western, the English makers, GEC, Siemens Brothers, Plessey, ATE, ATM. And if I have forgotten any names, I'd excuse that. Siemens Halske being one of the very early makers of telephones. Anyhow, before I start waffling on to many things, let me give you a little show, the diagram. There's the diagram. As you can see, I've used the two caps to hold the sheet down so you can see it. These diagrams are typical. They are folded up and slipped under the bells so you can see them. Obviously this is all in Spanish. If it had been an item for internationals that was sold around the world, you'd have had various languages including English. But here, you know, all you really got to learn is what the colours are, which are virtually self-explanatory. You've got your various different ways to connect this phone up. There's the diagram itself. I'll hold it on there so it focuses well. The dial springs are shown a bit different on this diagram. And there's the blurb underneath. But nowhere can I see a date. There you've got the model number. These are known, by the way, as a Geraldo phone. I understand they were quite popular, or very popular, in Spain and presumably in some of the South American countries. The Geraldo, and they're very, very similar. I also believe that the cords are always white, as this one is on the ones for Spain. Yeah, I've got one upstairs which is black, but that is, I think, for international use. Now I think I've covered everything here. I've done the dial. The bell is, as I say, the typical type of bell with your two gongs. Is a way of adjusting it, I believe, on the back. Anyhow, I'm going to turn this over gently to see what is on the other side. And I'll put it on its side. There's what is actually written on the base. There's your bell adjuster, plus and minus. There's the name Elasa. Well, I think that they combined with Siemens. Also, there's that sign, which I've come across before, but I can't remember where. So if anyone knows what that sign means, I would like to know. And as you can see, it's quite a new phone. It's not one going back into antiquity, as you'd say. There's another number there, so that is probably the type number. But these phones are completely Citesa. Whether it was a changeover, I don't know whether ITT were bought out by someone, or they sold off the Citesa name. Someone out there will know. As I say, I may know certain things, but I certainly don't know everything. Anyway, that's quickly before I clear this one down. We'll close it. Let me show you the case. These are, I was told they're called mouse holes, which I suppose is right. You can imagine a little mouse on the skirting board. It would be that shape, and that is the shape that would be found in Spain. The squared off ones have either been altered or made in a different country, but the same shape. There's the case. I have put a fingernail up, which or thumbnail, or whatever they call it, a still photo, which I always try and do now. And there's the actual case. Very, very good condition. This phone, as I say, was sent a few days ago, and it arrived perfectly. Excellent packing. And now, while I mention transporting phones and lamps, if you like, always well packed stuff. Plenty of paper rolled up. The plastic things filled with air, they help. Always put the handset separate, certainly not on top of the phone. If they're on top of the phone, any knock in the post, and believe me, the stories I've heard about post you wouldn't want to send anything at all. But this information is second hand, because this is what I was told. And the person that told me is no longer with us. But anyhow, my advice would be to make sure the handset is well wrapped, padded, and kept separate from the phone. Make sure there's no rattling bits inside. And I say, this one arrived perfectly, and as I say, I will send a good feedback to the sender, and also mention that the phone is going to be featured on YouTube. And I think that is more or less all I've got to say. You're probably thinking, thank God for that. Anyhow, there's the phone. As I say, have a look next Sunday, 6:30, Andy's Shed, and I think you'll enjoy what you see. Any comments you can actually make and write. I don't know the ins and outs, how you, if you can just do it automatically, I don't know. I joined it, but you know, there's obviously, you can learn a lot from that. And it is good. It's something that I look forward to. He doesn't just do the telephones, he does other items. I've seen things as sewing machines. Was there a printer at one time? I'm not too sure. Some pianolas. So they're all interesting bits, and mentions often made of Crich, the tramway museum. Some other interests are the old trams. I remember the old London trams. Yeah, I'm not 90. I'm not 80 yet, but I'm almost 80. And I can remember as a child being on a tram from Wimbledon, going up to town, going through Tooting Broadway. And at Tooting Broadway, the trams were overhead up the Tooting Broadway. Then they used the conduit system, which is the electric collection is done underground. And the item they used to change the, I think it was called a plough, they had an item like a large shovel. I can just remember that. So, yeah, that was a long time ago. And also, while I mentioned this, when I went to school, it was on the good old trolley bus. So, yeah, I'm old, but I remember lots of things. Tell you loads of stories, interesting stories, perhaps boring stories, don't know. Anyhow, I'm going to shut up because I've probably driven you all to sleep. So once again, thanks again for watching. A little insight of what's going to come up next, hopefully, if it arrives in one piece, will be another telephone. And this is the auto phone, which were made or assembled at Wimbledon. So we'll wait and see if that arrives. Hopefully it'll arrive in one piece. Anyhow, thanks again for watching. Thank you, and I'm going to clear down. Thank you.